You are now listening to the RSL Show on KSL Sports, Utah's largest sports network. Your number one source for everything Real Salt Lake. Utah's number one rated Real Salt Lake podcast.
Welcome in. It's a brand new episode of the RSL Show. I'm Alex Napoles. No Joshua Clark today. He is on a well-deserved, well-earned vacation, but we do have a special guest joining us today. It is one of the OGs, possibly the OG, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know about that.
In Jake Simons.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, dude. I think this is the first time you and I have done this together.
We have, yes. This is the first time I think we've ever even had an official conversation that it's not over the phone.
Yeah, not text.
Yeah, there you go.
I love everything you're doing, and I'm glad to just be able to pop in and cover for my boy Josh while he goes and sees glaciers and stuff.
RSL is cooler than glaciers, in my opinion, but to each their own.
Yeah, I mean, he made choices. It's fine.
Jake, let's break down first of all, we apologize for not getting a show out after the horrible performance against the San Jose Earthquakes. Me and Josh, I think we're just too sad to hop on here and really digest what happened against San Jose. But some quick thoughts on San Jose, Jake.
Atrocious. Just
yes.
the absolute worst way to come out of a very long break. And, just the cherry on top is Chicho picking up an injury. Last thing you want to have happen. It's hard to predict when those types of games will happen. They're guaranteed to happen a couple of times a season, basically for every team, where you just kind of don't have it on a day. But so incredibly unfortunate to have a string of bad results before the break, have the break, hopefully get to figure some things out, add some new pieces, and then come into that San Jose game and just absolutely drop one. It's just the opposite of what you want to have happen.
It's a pretty great recap. It was not a good performance at all. Real Salt Lake did not seem like. I mean, I get you're integrating a bunch of new players, and we'll get into the new guys too here in just a minute. But that last game against San Jose, it just seemed like the attack that's been so potent for Real Salt Lake just could not figure it out. Yeah,
couldn't figure it out at all. And a lot of people are going to say, well, that's because we didn't have Gomez, and blame it very specifically on that one piece. I'm sure we'll talk about this for the rest of the season. What would have happened? How could we have done better? What if Gomez hadn't left? And that's going to be a very intense and argument full of hyperbole and a lot of what ifs. But the reality is the team that we had on the day, it was while we couldn't get anything going on offense, there have been times where we haven't been able to get things going on offense prior to the break and prior to losing Andres. The scarier thing to me is how flat and lackluster our defense has been for 8 weeks, 10 weeks. It's just that, and that persisted through the San Jose game. Just a really atrocious defensive performance from the front to the back. And does scoring some goals potentially shift things a little bit and make playing defense a little bit easier? Yes, obviously. But there's going to be a lot to be said about Andrew Brody almost exclusively. And I know that these things have been talked about. I love that kid, but just, kind of felt hung out to dry in that San Jose game. And a lot of that's not the attack's fault, right? If we're soft on defense, it's really hard to get things going in the attack and sort of vice versa. So just not a great game. Not fun.
I think in a lot of the ways that Real Salt Lake likes to play, it starts, obviously they play a lot out of the back, and so it starts defensively. So if you come in and you have a stinker defensively, I think it really just affects the whole team. It's just a trickle effect that goes from that defense to that midfield to that attack. And we saw it against San Jose. I thought a key to winning that San Jose game was going to be shaking off the rust within the first 15 minutes and finding a goal. But instead you make a mistake to concede a goal, and then all of a sudden you kind of set the tone for the rest of the game with that mistake.
Yeah, and two really mistakes within 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Um, and they just never came back from it. You know, when you're down 2-0 in the 33rd, you have 67 minutes left to do something. And to your point earlier, like you're integrating some new pieces, which is hard. You've got Crooks in a position that we haven't really seen a lot out of him in just yet, like playing as a 10. That hasn't been the most excellent thing. It just didn't, I don't know. There's a lot of things there. It wasn't the lineup that I wanted to see coming out of the break. It's not the type of play we like to see from RSL at all. Most of the game, you have total control of the ball and you still can't get into good positions to score. Like the XG for Real Salt Lake in that game was below 1. That's awful. We like never, ever, ever again should we have an XG below 1. That just means we're not being aggressive enough. We're not being creative enough. We're not taking chances. And a team with our attacking power should always be getting in dangerous positions. Always. We see consistently if we get into dangerous positions, we score goals. Now, Chicho getting hurt in the 42nd, not great. Definitely doesn't help. But you got to find, the best teams, and we've talked about this for years, the best teams find ways to get results, period. And RSL is a really good team this year. And like I said, it'll happen a couple of times a year, but at this point in the season, it can't happen again, right? Like Absolutely. It's really unfortunate that happened against San Jose, but 8 games left now, can't happen again.
San Jose at the bottom of the table, the wooden spoon leaders. Real Salt Lake loses 2-0 to the Earthquakes. Let's close the chapter on that horrible, horrible match. And let's look ahead to the last match on Saturday against the New England Revolution, where a couple changes in the lineup, some due to injury, like Philip Quinton starting over Brian Vera. Gavin Beavers getting a start. Javane Brown also gets a start. Jake, real quick, just initial thoughts on that starting 11 for Real Salt Lake.
I was pretty pumped, honestly. I saw some people talking about it, like the Quinton. I will eat some crow right now because anytime I see him on a starting lineup, I'm like, oh crap, here we go. But other than that, I was pretty pumped. I love seeing Beavers get the start. Brown to me is the right back from now going forward. I think it would be a really weird shift to see him go back to the bench. And everything else is kind of the attack that I want to see until Chicho gets back. Like once Chicho is back, Anderson goes back to coming off the bench, and you've got basically my starting 11 with Vera in for Quinton. So excited! I was really stoked to see Gonzalez in a more attacking role, like maybe pulling the strings a little bit more. Kind of interested to see how he played there. And I'm pretty high on Lachlan Brook. I think between he and Dominic, the right side is significantly stronger than it was. Come at me, Gomez lovers. I loved him too. I think having 2 really strong replacements for him, to me, is an upgrade in every single way. So yeah, pretty excited.
And I love that you bring that up because from what we've seen between Brooke, I know we don't really have the biggest of sample sizes on Mark Zook yet, but I think it's going to be a really interesting battle between the two to see who solidifies himself as the Gomez replacement, as the starter on that right wing.
Yeah, I had this weird thought too, because I know Brooke is a true right winger. He's got a solid left foot. You want him cutting in out of the wing, putting it onto his left foot, but man, I'd be real tempted on days to put him on the left and put Dominic on the right and just see what happens. And maybe this year's not the year for it, but there's a real strong case to play more of a 4-4-2 with our personnel, or play out like a 4-4-2, especially with Anelli, who can be stellar, or Ojeda, who can be stellar kind of as a single 5-6 guy. I don't know. I just think there's so many options now, and that fight. And honestly, like you put Brooke, you put Dominic in there, and even like guys like Chang, a guy like Chang has to really step up because of the attacking talent that we have sitting on the bench.
Biggest reason why Real Salt Lake made the moves they did this offseason was for the depth. Now you have the options. Now you have what you're talking about is the opportunities to rotate, bring in guys, and have different looks in the attack. And as soon as those guys integrate, I think Real Salt Lake will just be back to its high potent attacking self. We kind of saw a little bit out of Brook on Saturday. He had a couple of really good opportunities, specifically one in that first half where he cut inside, put it on his left, took a shot, but Ivacic saved it. Really like what I've seen so far from Lachlan Brook.
Oh, super impressed. The thing that stands out the most to me, like, and I'm going to do this a lot over the next 6 months, right? Like him compared to Andres, the way he stayed wide, in a position ready to receive the ball, both in the attack and when he was playing defense, instead of like kind of floating into the middle, was refreshing. Like I mentioned, I think he's going to be really dangerous coming in from the right. If we can break out, feed him the ball to the right like we did, and then he can make that cut back in onto his left foot. There are goals in that kid this year on that move. It's like very Frank Ribery, where he's probably only got that one move. But if you can get him on the right and then get that cut, get a defender to bite, he's either got a fantastic shot, which we saw, tons of power, or he can put a ball across to Chicho or somebody running in. And you could tell too, like, to your point about them getting on the same page, dude, like he and Gonzalez were off. They were off by a second or two, right? Is Diogo gonna check or is he gonna break? Is he gonna run through the channel or is he gonna drop in? Like those types of things will take another week or two. And then between Lachlan and Dominic and Diogo, I think you could really have something very special. Like, honestly.
I can't wait for Diogo to find his footing and get comfortable in this attack, man. We've already seen glimpses a little bit of what Diogo brings to the table. And I truly think that once he gets comfortable with Chicho, with Aluna, with Markchuk, with Lachlan Brook, with all of them, once he begins to pull the strings and command that midfield, I do think he has the tools to be one of the best 10s in this league, man.
Yeah, I mean, there was one shot. He almost had his opener, right? He almost scored a goal.
Yeah, he did.
And to me, it was just being in dangerous positions all game. And they were, the team was just like half a step off or, 1 second off from making something really special happen. What I find really fascinating is the hate that I've seen online a little bit about him. Like, it blows me away that consistently, repeatedly, for the almost 12 years I've been doing this now, people don't understand how important your position off the ball is all of the time, right? And like Matt Crooks has gotten had been a similar topic of discussion where they don't understand that just by positioning himself in dangerous areas and drawing a defender's attention, he's opening up space for another attacker.
Yes.
Right? And we saw the same thing when Crooks got here early this season. Like he was making these runs that Real Salt Lake didn't know what to do with. And I think that that's the same thing that we've got with Gonçalves right now, where he's making these runs that are like check and break, or he's going like he's going to go through a channel, but then he drops in. Those runs are things that you don't see a lot of in MLS and at Real Salt Lake. So a guy like Diego Luna or a guy like Michael Chang has no idea what to do with a center midfielder who's like faking a break through a channel and then dropping in to receive the ball. That takes time. To your point, like if we can get him tighter, get him more touches on the ball, help the team understand it. Between him and Crooks and Chicho, that middle, the spine, could be just incredible. And frankly, if Brian Ojeda keeps playing the way that he's been playing, and Emeka Eneli keeps playing the way he's playing, I think you're looking at the best spine in MLS. I really do. And
that's bold. That's a bold statement,
dude. Front to back, right? Chicho leading the Golden Boot, and he's been out for 6 games. How crazy is that? Right?
That's very poor on guys like Benteke who have been fighting all season with Chicho for that top spot, and now Chicho has gone basically 2 months without playing Major League Soccer, and Chicho still leads the race.
It blows my mind. But like, if you go Chicho, Diogo, or Matt Crooks, then you go Brian Ojeda, Emeka Eneli, Vera, Glad, Gavin. I'll put it up there all day. As the best spine in Major League Soccer.
I like that because of Gavin Beavers, and let's have a conversation about Gavin. Obviously, there was a mistake from Zach McMath in the last match that led directly to a San Jose goal. Gavin Beavers, we've been hearing it all season that there was going to be a rotation between him and Zach all season long. We've been seeing it. Maybe the rotation favor Gavin just a little bit more in recent games. And all of the XG and the advanced analytics say that Gavin has been having the better season between the two. So, Jake, at this point, with Rouse Lake right in the thick of potentially being a top 4 team in the Western Conference, playoffs right around the horizon, do we solidify Gavin as the number 1?
I think you have to going down the stretch. And I'm just going to say this out loud. First off, I met Zach McMath in a parking lot at a Harmon's one time. Seems like a lovely guy. I'm sure he's great. But like, there are 4 at least games that are squarely on Zach McMath that we have lost. They're not like a bad defensive mistake. They're not like a phenomenal shot from someone. It's Zach McMath being silly, right? Yeah. Just like having a howler. Now, it's aggressive of me to say, like, if you put Gavin Beavers in those games instead of Zach McMath, clearly we're going to win them. But there's a really strong argument to be made that Gavin doesn't make those mistakes. He's got a cooler head. He stays like positioned really well. I pulled up his stats while we're talking. He has a 96% accuracy when playing like in the defensive position. So clearances, winning balls from attackers. He has a high claim percentage, so of 93%. So if it's in the air and it's coming across the box, Gavin is going to go get it. He has one of the lowest goals conceded percentages in the league. He's got 40% of his games this year are clean sheets. Like it shouldn't even be an argument. It, honest to God, shouldn't even be an argument. The guy should be starting. And like I said earlier this year, I think we should sell him because I think his value is really high. But at this point, we need the 19-year-old in goal, which is like the weirdest thing to say in the entire world. But like, I love him. I love the way he plays. I love his attitude. He's really like long, and I like just feel like his wingspan pulls us out of bad situations. And to be frank, like I know he's young, and I know the rotation probably made a lot of sense. I think this is the mistake that Pablo has made this year. Like if you were to say there was like one thing that was kind of questionable with lineup decisions consistently throughout the year, after Zach made in almost 2 consecutive games, made the same mistake where he got way out of position and missed a clearance and it led immediately to a goal, I would have put him on the bench. That's just my opinion.
No, and I'm right there with you, man. I've had this conversation with Josh as well. Is, after all those mistakes from a guy who's been in this league forever, who's a veteran, you should be expecting more, and
Yep.
he should be not making those mistakes. Those are the mistakes that you expect a 19-year-old to make, rather than a 12-year veteran in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what's almost more interesting is I think Zach had a phenomenal year last year. I was really impressed with him.
And he started this year strong too.
Let's not forget strong.
That.
Yep. Started this year really strong. And I don't know if it's that he sees the signs on the wall or like what, but I have been just like shocked, guffawed, flabbergasted, whatever old person word you want to use, at like how ridiculous some of the goals he lets in are. You know what I mean?
The ones that stand out right away to me, LA Galaxy, you're up 2-1 on the road. Miguel Berry steals that ball from McMath and puts it in the back of the net. We lose points on that game.
Awful.
You have the 3-3 in Dallas, where 2 of the goals are, maybe even the 3, if I remember right.
All 3.
All 3 were off mistakes from Zach McMath. Easily avoidable mistakes. Those are the 2 that pop up in my head, like right off the top of my head. But it's been time and time this season where McMath makes those mistakes, and we're still seeing this rotation. We saw it last week where another mistake from McMath led to a goal, and now I think it's just time. And look, forget the stats, throw away the analytics. Look at the presidents in the league. Patrick Schulte was a young guy who took the job from Eloy Room, who was a fantastic goalkeeper in his own at Columbus. Youngster stepped up. Columbus wins MLS Cup.
Yeah.
Roman Celentano for FC Cincinnati, a young goalkeeper coming out from coming up from the ranks, takes the job from the starting goalkeeper, who I believe was Kenneth Vermeer at the time, who was an international name.
Yeah.
And does really well, and now is the starting keeper for Cincinnati. So the precedent is there of letting the young keeper take control, because good things happen when that happens.
Yeah, and he's got everything to prove, right? Like it's a kid who's at the beginning of his career, who wants to make a name for himself, who wants to go to Europe, who has to prove that he's good enough. And not to say that Zach McMath may not feel that way, but sometimes you wonder, right? Like, also, and I think in certain positions it's a lot easier to see when a player is fading. And I think goalkeeper is one of those positions where it's like very clear when you can see that a player is fading, because it's a lot easier to see when they're putting themselves into bad positions. And it's a lot easier to see when they're missing saves that they should be making. And I think that's what we're seeing from Zach. Like, the San Jose game should have made the first save, no question. Just get down on the right. Like, it's not. I don't see how you miss that, honestly. Anyways, I think the bigger thing is just follow your heart, play the 19-year-old, and let amazing things happen.
Interesting to see Javane Brown coming over from Vancouver Whitecaps. He was supposed to be brought in to be center back depth, slots in at the right back position. I mean, he's played it before. He played it with Vancouver, but he slots into the right back position on Saturday for Real Salt Lake. And he was one of my favorite players on the field.
Played out of his mind. It's awesome. I love a guy who's not afraid to get stuck in on a tackle. Love it. Big fan.
I liked what I saw from him going forward as well. Pushing that ball forward, getting involved into the attack. Javane Brown, I think, has made the argument that he should be the starting right back.
Yeah, and I would put forth that clearly the team saw something that led to him starting this game at right back, whether that's Andrew Brody slipping or him stepping up in a way. I'll take it, right? Like, as long as he continues putting in performances like that. And I will say, I freaking love Andrew Brody. I love everything about that kid. He's not a kid anymore. But like, I followed him since he was 15 years old. Like, he started with RSL. He was the youngest ever academy signing at the time. Like, kind of got a short end of the stick, got stuck on the Monarchs, goes out on loan to Austria, finds himself in Austria, comes back, wins a starting spot. Like, that's a great story. But the game is ruthless. The game demands progression. And in my view, Real Salt Lake just isn't the best team for Andrew Brody anymore. We saw something very similar happen to Aaron Herrera. Aaron Herrera, phenomenal player, got a little stuck at Real Salt Lake. Same pattern, same people, same whatever. Goes away, MLS All-Star, right? I think Andrew Brody could go to another team, preferably in the Eastern Conference, so we don't have to play him, and do really good things. I still think he has it. He's just lost like a little bit of the bite, a little bit of the chip on his shoulder. Like, he's playing with a little bit of fear. And I know that the team is working on that with him, but like, you can't work on that on the field. He can't be trying to figure out how to not be afraid of a tackle or how to not be afraid of taking the ball forward in a game with only 8 games left in the season. So we need somebody in there who's going to be aggressive. We need somebody in there who's going to take the ball forward. We need somebody who's going to get stuck into a tackle. If that's Brown, I'm all in. Sign me up.
Where does this leave a guy like Bodie Hidalgo for you?
I love Bodie Hidalgo. I think it could be a really interesting rotation and maybe like some situational stuff. But what I really liked about the game on Saturday was having, I know Brown's not like super fit right now, but having the option to bring him in at like the 70th minute, like one or the other in, to me, awesome. Right? Like, you bring in Bodie at the 62nd, you get some fresh legs on. I think Bodie's, well, I don't know. I think a lot of our wing backs besides Catravis have a lot to learn in the attack still. So there's still like some things that could be better from both of them going forward, but having Bodie or Brown and even Brody coming off the bench for the rest of the season, I'm not mad about that at all. Right now, if Brown, so the really interesting thing about the lineup is Brown not sliding in for Vera and just leaving Brody or Bodie on the right. I don't want to read into that way too much, but that's, to me, it says something and I know Quentin scored. I get it. But like, There were 9 times in that game where I held my breath because Quentin was on the ball doing something stupid with it in like middle of the park, trying to beat a defender or an attacker he has no business trying to beat, and it just takes my breath away all of the time for all the wrong reasons. But anyways, it just says a lot. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses, and I would love to see Brown on the right side. Bodie is fine there as well. I think Andrew Brody's time might be up on the right for Real Salt Lake based on some things that I'm hearing.
As far as the Philip Quinton thing goes, as soon as you see him in the lineup, it doesn't inspire too much faith. And I think, he's on the younger side, 24 years old, came up from Columbus, played some college ball. I think, he's a solid depth piece, but like you mentioned, in this situation, I do want to see a Brown sliding in alongside Glad and allowing a guy like Hidalgo. I know he hasn't had the best of performances recently, but then again, who has on the defense? Yeah. Maybe beside Catranis, right?
Yep.
So it is an interesting choice to kind of put that faith in Brown on that right back position and allow Quinton to slot in at center back when you're missing your other number one center back in Vera.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you love the guy on the team, but you hope you see him as a starter as little as possible. And I've felt that way about like Eric Holt for a really long time. I used to say that about like at a point Luke Mulholland, where it's just like, what are you doing starting? Hi Luke, I love you. But I'm looking at his stats, and I know stats aren't everything, but he only wins like 40% of his duels, and 43.5% of his aerial duels, and he's huge.
Yes.
His passing's pretty good. He's got good long balls. Um, but like, there's just something about a center back who, I don't know, and maybe it's just lacks a certain feel for the game from my eye, but I don't know who else we put in there, right? Like if Vera's out, Brown to your point, but that just asks, there's all sorts of questions across the back line, I think. To your point, I agree with you entirely. Katranis is probably the only one where you're like, that dude's got it. Justin Gladys played better in the last kind of 10 to 12 games, but if Vera's not in, then it just causes this like domino effect across the back where there's people in positions where maybe we're not as stoked about them.
And we kind of saw it happen a little bit earlier too in the season when Vera was suspended, when Vera was out for the green card process, where he was out for a couple of games, right? Where there were so many questions about the center back depth and the defensive depth. But I think at the end of the day, the bottom line, I think there is a lot of positives to getting your first clean sheet since June 15th. I know it's New England, but a clean sheet after going so long and conceding these goals off silly defensive errors, I think it will go a long way for the confidence of this defense.
I hope so. And I think what's really nice is what the rest of the schedule looks like going from here through the rest of the season. Like it's not the most difficult part of our schedule by any means. The concern there being we always play down. So can we get healthy? Can we get Chicho back in a week or two? And can we see the rest of this out? I mean, aside from Houston, I'm not super nervous about the rest of the schedule.
I think as far as the toughest games, obviously that road trip to Houston, Rouse Lake need to shake whatever curse they have in Houston. They need to shake off the Houston Dynamo curse, because if we lose 3-0 or some absurd scoreline to the Houston Dynamo one more time, I will cry.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I would probably throw Portland in there. Portland was another game where I didn't really necessarily expect Rouse Lake to play as poorly as they did, but Portland absolutely blew Rouse Lake out of the water in Providence Park. Now you get Portland at home. I think that will also be a difficult game for Real.
Yeah, I could see that. I think I haven't been super impressed with Portland of late, but I mean, they beat Colorado last match, so that's a little sketchy because Colorado is surging. Portland's always a tough game. I love playing them at home. So yeah, it'll be a good one for sure.
Taking a look at the table, LA Galaxy sitting at the top, 52 points, 2 games in hand on LAFC, who's in second at 47. Real Salt Lake in third with 47, but LAFC have 2 games in hand on Real Salt Lake as well. Colorado creeping up with 44 points in fourth, Vancouver with 41. I kind of asked Josh the same question last time we talked, but is first place in the Western Conference still attainable for Real Salt Lake?
No, I'm going to be very real. I think it's well out of hand at this point, especially with how the Galaxy and LAFC have been playing. Do miracles happen? Yes. But I think third place, like maintaining third place, is going to be critical for RSL. Absolutely critical.
before the weekend started, Real Salt Lake was closer to 8th place than they were to 1st place, but luckily with a loss for the Galaxy against St. Louis and loss for LAFC, that gap at the top just gets a little bit tighter. But
a little bit tighter.
LAFC do have the games in hand, so I think LAFC at the end will probably take that top spot.
It'll be really interesting. So we've got Houston on Wednesday, and then Houston has LAFC on Saturday. That is a fun little stretch for Houston, and I wonder what that'll look like, especially considering they just beat LAFC. And then LA, we have a derby match in 2 weeks, LA versus LAFC. And LAFC, actually, now that I'm looking at it, they have a not so great schedule to finish out the year. I don't know, man.
They have a tougher one than RSL for sure.
Yeah, definitely tougher than us. I might retract my previous statement. I reserve the right to say that I disagree with myself in a couple of weeks if things go our way.
It's okay. You're on record. You looked at the schedule. We'll run the tape back.
I'm on record.
You can change your answer.
Yeah, I'm on record of saying I don't hold any opinion too strongly these days. Galaxies isn't easy either. They've got Portland, Colorado, Houston. That's gonna be fun.
I will say the supporter shield race out of the picture.
Yeah,
Inter Miami. I just don't see anybody beating Inter Miami right now.
Yeah, it's really annoying. I wish we could go stack the deck the way that Inter has. That would be pretty cool.
Supporter shield race, I think, was Inter Miami fully in control. Cincinnati, maybe, but I don't think anybody in the West will catch up.
Yeah, it'll even be a stretch for Cincinnati. I would think. There's definitely a chance, but they're 8 points back on the same games. That's a tough hill to climb.
Jake, anything else you want to add before we get out of here? Obviously, we're super happy with the 3 points. I think much needed 3 points for Real Salt Lake. But any last thoughts, comments you want to throw in here before we wrap this one up?
No, I think it's gonna. I don't know, dude. Like, I think you have to look at this season and be really happy with where Real Salt Lake is at, and I'm just super excited to watch the rest of the season. I hope that the team comes together. I know there was a lot of people with some sentiments that it was the end of the world when Andres Gomez left, and I'm kind of banging this drum pretty hard, but I'm really excited. I think we not only set ourselves up for a really interesting rest of the season this year, but I think next year is going to be spectacular. Like the direction that this club is heading is finally something to be excited about again. And I can't wait to watch the rest of this season play out. And then, hopefully some things go our way and we've got a home playoff match and we can do some work in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you, man. And to kind of piggyback off of that too, I don't want to look too far ahead because there's still a lot of really important soccer coming up down the stretch for Real Salt Lake. But I think a lot of people fail to realize that Real Salt Lake's war chest grew exponentially with Gomez leaving. And that just sets you just gave your team so much flexibility to continue to make this a championship roster in the winter window.
Fingers crossed. I'm really impressed with what the technical staff has been doing and the players that they've been able to identify. Some real surprises, like some really interesting surprises. And I think the Gomez, beyond the money, the Gomez transfer puts us on the map as a club that develops and sells players. So we have a couple of other really young guys that are probably very valuable in the market. I would be very, very, very surprised if Diego is with us next year. I'm very happy for him. I'd love to have him, but I also hope there's a fat offer for him in the off season and he gets to go play in Europe and we get a bunch more money to go buy some more players. That sounds awesome to me. So it's just going to be emotion that's really uncomfortable as a fan, but that's international football. That's how it goes. This is how you make money. This is how you develop a better team. Other teams have done this really well. We have not. We're starting to see those motions happen, and I'm super stoked about the work that is coming down from the technical staff.
It's what you, Josh, and Mitch and Andy have been asking for the longest time, and it's finally happening.
For so many years.
Hey, Jake, thank you so much for hopping on, man. Josh, of course, like we said, on vacation. Happy for him. Hope he's having fun. But Jake, you got to come on here, man. You got to come on here a little bit more, talk to me and Josh, and listen to our bad takes.
I'll try and be around a little bit more. This is fun. It's good. Good to be back.
Absolutely, man. We're happy to have you. Real Salt Lake, not in action this weekend. They have the weekend off because of the international break, but there is MLS action, including Houston Dynamo taking on LAFC. Tune into that. Real Salt Lake will be back in action next Saturday, September 14th, against the Houston Dynamo at Houston, 6:30 p.m. kickoff. We'll be back next week to preview that one. That's going to do it for us here on the RSL show. Thank you guys so much for listening, subscribing, tuning in. Go do what you got to do to follow us on social media to stay up to date with the best Real Salt Lake content.